The rain hammered against the apartment door like fists demanding entry. Daniel stood frozen in his small living room, staring at the silhouette visible through the frosted glass. He knew that posture. He'd memorized it over 4 years of working beside her. The slight tilt of her head when she was thinking, the way her shoulders squared when she was about to say something that terrified her. But Evelyn Cross didn't show up at employees' apartments, especially not former employees, especially not at 11 o'clock at night, soaked to the bone. He opened the door. She stood there in a designer coat that probably cost more than his monthly rent, her dark hair plastered to her face, mascara tracing delicate lines down her cheeks. Her eyes, those calculating, brilliant eyes that commanded boardrooms and dismantled competitors, were raw with something he'd only seen once before, the night she'd asked him to pretend to be hers. "I accepted you quitting," she said, her voice breaking on the last word. "I signed the papers. I let you walk out of that building. I respected your decision." She took a step forward and he saw her hands were shaking. "But I will not accept losing you." Daniel's chest tightened. This morning he'd placed his resignation letter on her desk. This morning he'd walked away from the best job he'd ever had, from the woman he'd fallen impossibly, irrevocably in love with. He'd done it to protect her, from the scandal, from her parents' wrath, from the impossible gap between a single father who fixed computers and a CEO who owned buildings. He'd done the right thing, so why was she here looking at him like he'd ripped her heart out? Before we continue, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let me take you back to where this impossible love story began. 4 months earlier, Daniel Rivera had perfected the art of being invisible. In a company of 3,000 employees, invisibility was survival. You kept your head down, did your work, and collected your paycheck. You didn't make waves. You certainly didn't stare at the CEO during quarterly meetings, even when she commanded the room with the kind of presence that made everyone else disappear. But Daniel had a good reason for invisibility. Every evening at exactly 5:30, he left Cross Technologies' gleaming headquarters and took 2 buses across the city to pick up his daughter from aftercare. Every morning at 6, he dropped Maya at her school and took those same 2 buses back. His life was a carefully balanced equation of daycare costs, rent payments, and the ever-present fear that one sick day, one missed deadline, one moment of being noticed for the wrong reasons would topple everything. So when Marcus Chen from accounting cornered him in the break room on a Tuesday morning, Daniel's first instinct was to apologize for whatever he'd done wrong. "Rivera, right? You're the guy who fixed the server crash last month?" Marcus was grinning, which seemed like a good sign. "Just did my job," Daniel said carefully. "In 4 hours on a Saturday when everyone else said it would take a week." Marcus leaned in conspiratorially. "The CEO personally asked who handled it. You're on her radar now, man, that's good news." Daniel's stomach dropped. Being on Evelyn Cross's radar was the opposite of invisible. "I really just... Department head wants you at the executive floor tomorrow, 9 a.m. Don't be late." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder and walked away, leaving Daniel holding his coffee like it might have answers. The executive floor, where decisions that affected thousands of people happened behind closed doors, where Daniel Rivera, single father with an associate's degree and a used Honda, absolutely did not belong. That night, Maya asked why he was so quiet during dinner. "Just thinking about work, princess." He smiled and stole one of her chicken nuggets, which made her laugh. She was 8 years old, with his late wife's eyes and smile. She was also the reason he couldn't afford to lose this job. "Is it the mean boss?" Maya asked seriously. "Tommy's dad says all bosses are mean." "Ms. Cross isn't mean," Daniel said and realized he meant it. He'd only interacted with Evelyn Cross directly twice. Once during the server crisis, when she'd thanked him with the kind of focused attention that made his words stumble, and once in an elevator where they'd stood in silence for 12 floors, while he tried not to notice that she smelled like jasmine and winter. She wasn't mean. She was terrifying in an entirely different way. The next morning, Daniel wore his only good suit, purchased 5 years ago for his wife's funeral, and arrived at the executive floor at 8:45. The space was all glass and steel and art that probably cost more than his yearly salary. A receptionist who looked like she belonged in a fashion magazine directed him to a conference room. Mr. Rivera? A woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and an expensive watch extended her hand. I'm Patricia Wen, Chief Operating Officer. Thank you for coming. Of course. Daniel shook her hand, confused. The department head was supposed to brief him, not the COO. I'll get straight to the point. We're restructuring the IT department. We need someone to lead the infrastructure team. Your performance record is exceptional, and Ms. Cross specifically requested you for the position. Daniel's brain stalled. Lead? I don't have management experience. You have something better. You have problem-solving skills and the respect of your colleagues. The salary is $95,000 plus benefits. Full medical, dental, and will cover continuing education if you want to pursue your bachelor's degree. $95,000. Daniel had been making $42,000. His voice cracked. I have a daughter. I'd need to keep regular hours. I can't do late nights regularly. Patricia smiled. Ms. Cross mentioned you might say that. The position includes flexible scheduling. We care about results, not FaceTime. It was too good, too perfect. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. Why me? Because when our entire system crashed and we were hemorrhaging money by the minute, you didn't panic. You fixed it. That's the kind of person we need leading our team. Patricia slid a folder across the table. Think about it. We'd need an answer by Friday. Daniel took the folder with shaking hands. Inside was a contract that would change his and Maya's life. He should have been ecstatic. Instead, unease coiled in his stomach. People didn't just hand out opportunities like this. There was always a catch. He found out what the catch was 3 weeks later. The promotion had been real. The new salary meant Maya could go to a better school. It meant health insurance that covered her asthma medication without copays that made him wince. It meant he could breathe for the first time in 3 years. But it also meant proximity to the executive floor. It meant occasional meetings where Evelyn Cross asked his opinion on infrastructure strategy, her dark eyes sharp and assessing. It meant being visible. And visibility, as it turned out, came with complications. The emergency board meeting was called on a Thursday afternoon. Daniel only knew about it because the entire executive floor was in chaos. Assistants running, phones ringing, tension thick enough to choke on. He was finishing a security audit when Patricia appeared at his desk. We need you in the boardroom. Now. Me? Why? The board is questioning our cybersecurity spending. Ms. Cross wants you to explain why the infrastructure upgrades are non-negotiable. Daniel's hands went cold. I'm not prepared for... You know the material better than anyone. Just tell them the truth. The boardroom was designed to intimidate. 20-foot ceilings, a table that could seat 30, and walls of windows overlooking the city. 15 people in suits that cost more than Daniel's car sat around that table, and every single one of them looked at him like he was an insect that had wandered in by mistake, except Evelyn Cross. She sat at the head of the table in a black suit that made her look like a queen holding court. When her eyes met his, something passed between them, a moment of silent communication that said, I know you're terrified, but I trust you. Mr. Rivera, she said coolly, please explain to the board why we're allocating $8 million to infrastructure upgrades when our profit margins are already under scrutiny. For the next 20 minutes, Daniel talked. He explained encryption standards, vulnerability patches, the cost of data breaches. He pulled up examples on the conference room screen, companies that had skimped on security and paid for it in lawsuits and destroyed reputations. The board members' expressions shifted from dismissive to attentive. When he finished, Evelyn smiled. Thank you, Mr. Rivera. As you can see, this isn't optional spending. It's survival. The vote passed. Daniel was dismissed. He was halfway to the elevator when he heard footsteps behind him. Mr. Rivera. He turned. Evelyn Cross stood alone in the hallway, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked tired. Thank you, she said quietly. That couldn't have been easy. Just doing my job, Ms. Cross. Evelyn. The correction was soft. When it's just us, you can call me Evelyn. Something in his chest tightened. That wouldn't be appropriate. Appropriate. She repeated the word like it tasted bitter. No, I suppose it wouldn't be. She turned to walk away, then stopped. My parents are on that board. Did you notice the two sitting at the far end? They didn't vote in favor, Daniel had noticed. The older couple who'd spent the entire presentation looking at him like he was dirt on their expensive shoes. They don't trust my decisions, Evelyn continued. They think I'm too young, Too impulsive, too emotional. They've been trying to undermine me since my father handed me this company 2 years ago. Why are you telling me this? Because you're one of the few people in this building who looks at me like I'm a person, not a title. She met his eyes. That's rare and valuable. And I wanted you to know that I notice. Then she walked away, leaving Daniel standing in the hallway with his heart racing and the distinct feeling that his carefully invisible life was about to get very, very complicated. 2 weeks later, everything fell apart. The scandal broke on a Monday morning. Photos of Evelyn leaving a restaurant with a married business partner, completely innocent, Daniel would learn later. A work dinner that ran late. But the tabloids didn't care about innocent. They cared about headlines. Cross IRS home wrecker? CEO scandal. Evelyn Cross caught an affair. By noon, the company's stock had dropped 3%. By evening, Evelyn's parents had called an emergency board meeting. Daniel heard about it through office gossip. He tried to focus on work, but his mind kept drifting to the executive floor, to the woman who'd trusted him in that boardroom, who'd called him valuable. At 7 p.m., his phone rang. Unknown number. Mr. Rivera, this is Evelyn Cross. I need to see you. Can you come to my office? His mouth went dry. Of course, when? Now, if possible. The executive floor was deserted when he arrived. Evelyn's office was at the far end, behind glass walls that were currently frosted for privacy. He knocked. Come in. She stood by the window, still in her work clothes, but with her jacket discarded, her hair pulled back. She looked smaller somehow, more human. I'm sorry to call you after hours, she said. I know you have your daughter. My neighbor is watching her. It's fine. Daniel stayed by the door, uncertain. What can I do for you? Evelyn turned to face him. In the dim light of her office, with the city glowing behind her, she looked lost. I need your help. But what I'm about to ask is completely inappropriate, possibly insane, and you have every right to refuse. Daniel's pulse hammered. Okay. My parents are forcing my hand. The board is questioning my leadership. There are whispers about replacing me with someone more stable, more traditional. She laughed bitterly. Someone who doesn't get photographed leaving dinners with business associates. That's not fair. You weren't. It doesn't matter what I was or wasn't doing. What matters is perception, and right now the perception is that I'm reckless. She crossed her arms, a defensive gesture he'd never seen from her before. My parents have a solution. They want me to marry Harrison Chen, Marcus's cousin, actually. He's from a good family, runs a hedge fund, checks all the appropriate boxes. Daniel's stomach turned over. And you don't want to. I don't love him. I barely know him. But my parents are threatening to force a vote of no confidence if I refuse. They have enough board support to do it. So marry him. The words tasted like acid. If it saves your company, I can't. Her voice broke. Daniel, I've spent my entire life being told what to do, who to be, how to act. I built this company into something real, something that matters. And I did it by trusting my instincts, not by following their rules. She took a step toward him. I won't let them force me into a cage, not even a gilded one. Then what do you need from me? She met his eyes, and in them he saw desperation and determination in equal measure. I need you to be my fake fiancé. The words hung in the air between them like something alive and dangerous. You need what? 6 months. Just 6 months of pretending we're together. Public appearances, enough to convince my parents and the board that I'm settled, responsible, in a committed relationship with someone who isn't Harrison Chen. She spoke quickly now, like if she slowed down she'd lose her nerve. You'd be compensated, generously. Your daughter's education would be covered through college, your mortgage paid off. Anything you need. Daniel couldn't breathe. Why me? Because I trust you. Because you don't want anything from me except to do your job. Because when you look at me, you see a person, not a dollar sign. Her hands twisted together. And because I'm desperate and you're the only person I know who might possibly say yes. This is insane. I know. Your parents will never believe it. He gestured at himself. I'm not from your world. I'm an IT manager with a used car and a daughter. They'll see through this in seconds. Let me worry about my parents. Evelyn moved closer. Daniel, I wouldn't ask if I had any other option, but I'm out of moves. And in 6 months, when things calm down, we stage a quiet breakup. You go back to your life, I keep my company, and Maya gets her future secured. Maya. The trump card Evelyn didn't even know she was playing. I need to think about it, Daniel said. I understand. Take until tomorrow, but Daniel? She reached out, almost touching his arm, then pulled back. I promise I'll make this worth your while, and I promise I'll protect you and your daughter from any fallout. You have my word. Daniel left her office with his head spinning, and his life balanced on the edge of a choice he never should have had to make. That night, he sat in Maya's room watching her sleep, remembering all the times he'd checked his bank account and felt the familiar twist of anxiety. Remembering the asthma attack last year when he'd had to choose between the emergency room copay and groceries. Remembering his wife's voice in his head. Take care of our baby, whatever it takes. At 6 a.m., he called Evelyn Cross. I'll do it, he said, but I have conditions. Name them. Maya comes first, always. If this puts her at risk in any way, I walk. Agreed. And when this is over, I want your help setting up a college fund. Not just for her education, for her future. So she never has to make desperate choices because of money. There was a pause. Then Evelyn's voice, soft and sincere. You have my word. Then we have a deal. He hung up the phone and stared at his reflection in the dark window. Somewhere in the last 5 minutes, Daniel Rivera had stopped being invisible. He just hoped he hadn't made the biggest mistake of his life. The plan was simple. Be seen together often enough to make it believable, but not so much that it disrupted their real lives. Daniel would attend company events as Evelyn's partner. They'd be photographed at a few carefully chosen restaurants, maybe a charity gala or two. In private, nothing would change. That was the plan. Reality, as it turned out, had other ideas. The first public appearance was a tech industry mixer on a Friday evening. Daniel stood in his living room adjusting his tie, a new one purchased that afternoon with money that still felt surreal in his bank account, while Maya sat on the couch watching him with the solemn intensity only an 8-year-old could muster. You look fancy, Daddy, she said. I feel like a fraud, he muttered. What's a fraud? Someone who's pretending to be something they're not. He met her eyes in the mirror hanging by the door. Princess, I need to tell you something about my new job. Is it bad? No, but it's complicated. He sat down beside her. You know Ms. Cross, the lady who owns the company. The pretty one. Daniel's face heated. She's my boss, yes. And for the next few months, we're going to pretend that we're dating, like boyfriend and girlfriend. Maya's eyes went wide. But you're not really? No, it's just pretend. To help her with some grown-up work problems. That's weird. Yes, it is. Maya tilted her head, considering. Does she know it's pretend? Of course she does. We both agreed to it. Okay. Maya shrugged and went back to her cartoon. Just like that, the conversation was over. Daniel envied his daughter's ability to accept the absurd without question. If only the rest of the world were that easy. The mixer was held at a rooftop venue downtown, all twinkling lights and people in clothes that cost more than Daniel's monthly salary. Evelyn met him at the entrance, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. She wore a deep green dress that somehow made her look both powerful and vulnerable. Her hair was down, falling in dark waves over her shoulders. When she smiled at him, it was tentative, nervous, an expression he'd never seen on her face before. You came, she said. We had a deal. Right. The deal. Something flickered in her eyes, too quick to name. Shall we? She offered her arm. Daniel took it, hyper-aware of every point where their bodies touched, and they walked into the party together. For the first hour, it was exactly as uncomfortable as Daniel had feared. People stared, whispered. A few bold souls approached to introduce themselves, their eyes cataloging Daniel's off-the-rack suit and Target shoes. Evelyn handled it with grace, introducing him as her partner, deflecting invasive questions with practiced ease. But Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders, the tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. You okay? He murmured during a rare moment alone. I hate these things, she admitted. Everyone performing, everyone judging. It's exhausting. Want to leave. She looked startled. We've only been here an hour. We should stay at least another. Evelyn. He said her name quietly, intimately, the way someone who actually loved her might. Do you want to leave? She stared at him for a long moment. Then she laughed, a real laugh that transformed her face. Yes. God, yes. They left through a side exit, Evelyn's hand in his, and suddenly they were on the street with the night air cool against their faces and the party's noise fading behind them. Where's your car? Evelyn asked. 2 blocks that way. Where's yours? I have a driver, but I sent him home. Didn't want him waiting all night. She looked at Daniel. Can I buy you dinner? Real dinner, not those tiny portions of pretentious food? You want to get dinner together? We're supposed to be dating, remember? Might as well make it look convincing. But there was something in her voice that suggested this wasn't entirely about the act. They ended up at a diner near Daniel's neighborhood. Vinyl booths and fluorescent lights, and a menu that had pictures. Evelyn looked completely out of place in her designer dress, and completely at ease. You come here often? She asked, sliding into a booth. Every Saturday morning, Maya loves their pancakes. Maya. Evelyn said his daughter's name carefully, like it was something precious. You've never really talked about her. At work, I mean. Never seemed appropriate. Tell me about her now. So he did. He told her about Maya's obsession with dinosaurs, her terrible jokes, the way she still sometimes crawled into his bed during thunderstorms. He told her about his wife, briefly, the facts without the grief, and how Maya had her mother's smile. Evelyn listened with an intensity that made him self-conscious. You love her very much, she said finally. She's my whole world. That must be nice, being someone's whole world. There was no self-pity in her voice, just observation. You don't have that? I have parents who see me as an investment, a board that sees me as a liability, and a company that I built from nearly nothing, but that doesn't actually need me. She smiled without humor. So no, I don't think I'm anyone's whole world. Daniel reached across the table and covered her hand with his. It was meant to be comforting, friendly, but the moment their skin touched, electricity shot up his arm. Evelyn's eyes widened. She didn't pull away. You're wrong, Daniel said quietly. I've seen the way your employees talk about you. The way they respect you. You matter to a lot of people. That's not the same thing. No, he agreed. It's not. They sat there for a moment, hands touching, something unspoken building between them. Then the waitress arrived with their food, and the moment broke. But something had shifted. Something neither of them was ready to name. The next time they appeared in public together was 2 weeks later at a company charity gala. This time, Evelyn insisted Daniel bring Maya. It's a family event, she explained over the phone. There will be other children there, and if we're supposedly serious, it makes sense that I'd want to meet your daughter. Daniel's stomach nodded. I don't know if that's a good idea. Why not? Because Maya's already asked me twice if the pretty boss is coming to visit. Because if my daughter gets attached to you, she'll be heartbroken when this ends. Because I'm having a hard enough time keeping my own feelings professional, without watching you interact with the person I love most in the world. She might say something. Kids don't have filters. I like that about kids. Evelyn's voice softened. Please, Daniel. I'd really like to meet her. So Daniel found himself standing in the lobby of the convention center on a Saturday afternoon, Maya's hand in his, watching Evelyn Cross walk toward them in a simple blue dress that somehow made her look more beautiful than any designer gown. Maya's hand tightened in his. Hi, Evelyn said, kneeling down to Maya's eye level. You must be Maya. Your dad talks about you all the time. Maya studied her with the seriousness of a judge. Are you really his girlfriend? Daniel's heart stopped. Evelyn didn't even blink. I really like your dad. Does that count? I guess. Maya tilted her head. You're really pretty. Thank you, so are you. Evelyn smiled. Your dad told me you like dinosaurs. Maya's eyes lit up. I love dinosaurs. My favorite is the ankylosaurus because it has armor and a club tail and it can defend itself. That's a good choice. I always liked the pterodactyl. That's not technically a dinosaur, Maya said seriously. It's a flying reptile. Evelyn laughed, delighted. You're absolutely right. Thank you for the correction. And just like that, Maya was hooked. The gala was easier than Daniel expected. Maya charmed everyone she met, and Evelyn never left her side, genuinely interested in every rambling story about school and friends and the frog Maya had found in the backyard. When Maya got tired, Evelyn found a quiet corner and let the girl rest against her shoulder, while Daniel went to get drinks. When he came back, Maya was asleep, curled against Evelyn's side. Evelyn was stroking her hair with one hand, her expression so tender it made Daniel's chest ache. She's wonderful, Evelyn whispered when Daniel sat down. She likes you. The feeling is mutual. Evelyn looked at him. You're lucky to have someone who loves you without conditions, without agendas. That's rare. You could have that too. Someday. Maybe. But she didn't sound convinced. Daniel watched his daughter sleep against this woman who was supposed to be temporary, pretend, a business arrangement, and he felt something inside him crack open, something dangerous and terrifying and completely beyond his control. He was falling for Evelyn Cross. The realization should have sent him running. Instead, he reached over and took her free hand, lacing their fingers together. She looked at him, surprised. "For the cameras," he said, even though there were no cameras in this quiet corner. "Right," she whispered. "For the cameras." Neither of them let go. The next month was a blur of increasingly domestic moments that didn't feel like pretending. Evelyn started coming to Daniel's apartment on weekday evenings, ostensibly to maintain appearances for any photographers who might be watching, but she always stayed for dinner. Always helped Maya with homework. Always seemed reluctant to leave. One night, after Maya had gone to bed, they sat on Daniel's worn couch drinking wine that Evelyn had brought. Expensive wine that made Daniel feel like a barbarian when he admitted he couldn't taste the difference between it and the $10 bottle from the grocery store. "I have a confession," Evelyn said suddenly. Daniel's heart lurched. "What?" "I don't come here for the arrangement anymore. I come here because this place feels more like home than my penthouse ever has." She stared into her wine glass. "Is that pathetic?" "No." Daniel's voice was rough. "It's not pathetic at all. I like the way Maya laughs at my terrible jokes. I like that your apartment smells like actual cooking instead of nothing because I never have time to eat at home. I like that when I'm here, no one wants anything from me except conversation." She looked at him finally. "I like being around you, Daniel, as myself. Not as the CEO or the heiress or the disappointing daughter. Just me." Daniel's heart was racing. They were treading into dangerous territory. "Evelyn, I know." She set down her wine glass. "I know this complicates things. I know we have a deal and an end date, and this is supposed to be professional. But I need you to know that for me, somewhere along the way, it stopped being an act." The words hung between them, honest and vulnerable and terrifying. Daniel could have backed away, should have backed away. Instead, he reached out and touched her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "It stopped being an act for me too," he admitted. Evelyn's breath caught. She leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. "This is a terrible idea," she whispered. "The worst," he agreed. "We're going to get hurt. Probably. My parents will destroy you if they find out this is real." "I know." She opened her eyes, and in them Daniel saw fear and hope and something that looked dangerously like love. "Kiss me," she said. "Not for the cameras, not for the deal, just because you want to." So he did. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, both of them terrified of what they were starting. But then Evelyn's hands tangled in his hair, and Daniel pulled her closer, and the kiss deepened into something desperate and real, and completely beyond pretense. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn rested her forehead against his. "What are we doing?" she whispered. "I don't know, but I don't want to stop." "Me neither." They sat there in the dim light of his living room, holding each other, both fully aware they'd just crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Down the hall, Maya slept peacefully, unaware that her father had just fallen completely, irrevocably in love with a woman who could never really be his. The universe, Daniel thought, had a cruel sense of humor. But in that moment, with Evelyn in his arms and her heartbeat against his chest, he couldn't bring himself to care about the inevitable disaster waiting for them. For now, this was enough. For now, she was his. The end would come soon enough, but tonight they pretended it wouldn't. The next morning, Maya found them asleep on the couch, still holding each other. She stood in the doorway with her stuffed dinosaur, studying them with the wisdom of someone far older than 8. "I knew it," she whispered to herself, smiling. Then she went to make cereal, leaving the grown-ups to their complicated feelings. The following weeks were the happiest Daniel had been since his wife died. He and Evelyn stopped pretending they were pretending. When they held hands in public, it was real. When they kissed for the cameras were irrelevant. Maya blossomed under the attention. Evelyn taught her chess, took her to museums, listened to hour-long lectures about prehistoric creatures with genuine interest. The three of them fell into an easy rhythm. Dinners together, weekend outings, movie nights where Maya would fall asleep between them, and they'd carry her to bed together. Daniel tried not to think about the end date, tried not to remember this was temporary. but reality had a way of intruding. It happened on a Thursday night, 2 months before their agreed-upon breakup. Evelyn had just arrived at Daniel's apartment when her phone rang. She checked the screen and her face went pale. "My father," she said. "I have to take this." She stepped into the hallway. Daniel tried not to eavesdrop, but the walls were thin. "No, father, I told you." Her voice was strained. "He's not inappropriate. He's kind and intelligent and—" A long pause. "That's not fair. You can't—" Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was small. "I understand. Yes, I'll be there." She came back inside with tears in her eyes. "What happened?" Daniel asked. "Family dinner. Tomorrow night. They want to meet you. Officially." She laughed bitterly. "My father made it clear this is a test. If you don't pass, they're moving forward with the vote of no confidence." Daniel's blood ran cold. "What kind of test?" "The kind where they try to humiliate you until you break. The kind where they prove you're not good enough for their daughter and their company." She wiped her eyes angrily. "I told them you're better than any of their country club friends. They don't care. Then I'll go. I'll show them." "No." Evelyn gripped his arms. "Daniel, you don't understand. These people are cruel. They'll find every weakness, every insecurity, and they'll twist the knife. I can't let them do that to you. I can handle it. I don't want you to have to." Her voice broke. "I don't want them to make you feel less than because you're not. You're everything they'll never be, genuine and caring and good. But they won't see that. They'll just see someone who doesn't belong in their world." Daniel pulled her close. "Then we won't go. If we don't go, they win. The vote happens, I lose the company, and this was all for nothing." They stood there, holding each other, both knowing the fragile bubble they'd built was about to burst. "We'll figure it out," Daniel said, even though he had no idea how. But that night, lying in bed alone, he couldn't shake the feeling that the end was coming faster than either of them had planned, and when it came, it was going to destroy them both. The Cross family estate sat in the hills outside the city like a monument to wealth and exclusion. Daniel drove his Honda up the winding driveway, painfully aware of how out of place his car looked among the luxury vehicles parked near the entrance. Evelyn sat beside him in the passenger seat, her hands twisted in her lap, her usual confidence replaced by something that looked like dread. "We can still leave," Daniel said quietly. "Turn around right now. No, we have to do this." But her voice shook. Maya was staying with Daniel's neighbor for the evening. Before they'd left, she'd hugged Evelyn tight and whispered, "Don't let them be mean to you." Evelyn had nearly cried. Now, standing at the massive front door, Daniel straightened his tie, the expensive one Evelyn had bought him, though he suspected even that wouldn't be enough, and took her hand. "Whatever happens in there," he said, "we face it together." She squeezed his fingers. Together. The door opened before they could knock. A woman in her 60s with Evelyn's bone structure and none of her warmth stood in the entrance. Her eyes swept over Daniel with the efficiency of an appraiser evaluating merchandise. "Mother," Evelyn said stiffly. "This is Daniel Rivera." "Daniel, my mother, Victoria Cross." "Mrs. Cross." Daniel extended his hand. "Thank you for inviting me." Victoria's handshake was brief and cold. "Mr. Rivera, do come in." The interior of the house was exactly what Daniel expected. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, art that belonged in museums. They were led to a sitting room where a man who could only be Evelyn's father sat in a leather chair like a king on a throne. Richard Cross was tall, silver-haired, and carried himself with the absolute certainty of someone who'd never been told no. "So," Richard said without preamble, not bothering to stand, "you're the man my daughter has been parading around town." "Dad," Evelyn warned. "It's fine," Daniel said, though his jaw was tight. "Mr. Cross, it's nice to finally meet you." "Is it?" Richard gestured to the couch. "Sit. Let's have a conversation." The conversation was an interrogation disguised as polite interest. Where did Daniel go to school? What did his parents do? How exactly did he plan to support their daughter in the lifestyle she was accustomed to? Daniel answered honestly, watching their expressions grow progressively more disdainful with each revelation. Community college. Father was a mechanic. Mother a nurse. He didn't plan to support Evelyn. She was perfectly capable of supporting herself. That last answer made Victoria's lips thin to nothing. "How progressive," she said, her tone making it clear this was not a compliment. Dinner was worse. They were joined by 2 board members and their wives, all old money, all looking at Daniel like he was a fascinating specimen in a zoo. The questions became more pointed, more cruel. "So you have a daughter," one of the wives said, her smile sharp. "From a previous marriage?" "My wife passed away 3 years ago," Daniel said evenly. "Oh, how tragic." But there was no sympathy in her voice. "And you're raising her alone? That must be difficult. On a civil servant's salary." "IT manager," Daniel corrected. "And yes, it's challenging, but we manage." "I'm sure Evelyn has been a great help," Richard interjected. Financially speaking, the implication was clear. Daniel felt Evelyn go rigid beside him. "Dad, that's enough," she said. "I'm simply trying to understand the nature of this relationship. You can't blame us for being curious about a man who appeared out of nowhere and captured our daughter's attention so thoroughly." "He didn't appear out of nowhere," Evelyn said, her voice rising. "He's worked at my company for 4 years. He's talented, dedicated, and—" "He's an employee," Victoria cut in. "An employee you've elevated far beyond his qualifications and are now apparently sleeping with. You see how this looks, darling." The room went silent. Daniel felt something inside him crack. Every insecurity he'd ever had about this relationship, about his worth, his place in Evelyn's world, came rushing to the surface. These people were saying out loud what he'd been thinking in private for weeks. "I think," he said carefully, setting down his fork, "that I've made a mistake coming here." "Daniel," Evelyn reached for his hand. "No," he pulled away gently. "They're right. I don't belong in this world. I never did." "That's not true," Evelyn said desperately. "Isn't it?" He looked at her, and the pain in his eyes made her flinch. "Look around, Evelyn. Look at these people, this house, this life. I can't give you any of this, and they know it. I don't want any of this," she said. "I want you." "For how long?" The question came out harsher than he intended. "Until you realize they're right. Until you see what they see. A man who's using you for your money and your connections. I would never think that. But everyone else does." He stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Your parents, the board, the press, they're all waiting for me to prove them right. And maybe I already have." Richard leaned back in his chair, satisfied. At least the boy has some self-awareness. "Shut up," Evelyn snapped at her father. She stood, grabbing Daniel's arm. "Don't do this. Don't let them win. They've already won." Daniel's voice was hollow. "This was always going to end, Evelyn. We both knew that. Maybe it's better if it ends now, before what? Before I fall more in love with you than I already am?" The room went very still. Evelyn's eyes were bright with tears. "Yes, Daniel. I love you. I'm in love with you. And I don't care what they think or what the board thinks or what anyone thinks. I care about you and Maya and the life we could have together." Daniel's heart was breaking. "You deserve better than me. I deserve someone who loves me, who sees me, who makes me feel like I matter." Her voice cracked. "That's you. That's always been you." For a moment, Daniel wavered. He wanted so badly to believe her, to believe this could work. Then Richard spoke, his voice cold and final. "Mr. Rivera, let me be frank. If you continue this relationship with my daughter, I will make your life very difficult. Your job at Cross Technologies will be terminated. Your daughter's school, the one Evelyn arranged for her, will no longer have a spot available. And I will personally ensure that no reputable company in this city will hire you." "You can't do that," Evelyn said, horrified. "I can and I will, unless Mr. Rivera does the right thing and walks away now." Daniel looked at Richard, then at Victoria, then at the board members who sat silent, complicit. These people had power, real power, the kind that could destroy his life with a phone call. And Maya. Everything came back to Maya. Her education, her future, her safety. He'd promised to protect her. "Whatever it takes." "Daniel, please," Evelyn whispered. "We'll figure this out. No." The word came out flat, defeated. He looked at Evelyn, memorizing her face. "This was a mistake. All of it. I'm sorry." He walked out of that house and didn't look back, even when he heard Evelyn calling his name, even when he heard her crying. He drove home on autopilot, his hands shaking on the steering wheel. When he pulled into his parking spot, he just sat there in the dark, trying to breathe through the pain in his chest. His phone buzzed. Evelyn calling. He sent it to voicemail. It buzzed again, and again, and again. Finally, he turned it off. The next morning, Daniel arrived at work early, before anyone else. He wrote out his resignation letter by hand, trying to keep his writing steady. When he finished, he read it over once, then sealed it in an envelope. He took the elevator to the executive floor. Evelyn's office was dark. She probably hadn't slept, was probably at home devastated. Good. Better for both of them if they didn't see each other again. He left the envelope on her assistant's desk with instructions to deliver it directly to Ms. Cross. Then he went back to his office and started packing his personal items into a box. Photos of Maya, the coffee mug she'd made him in art class, the small plant Evelyn had given him weeks ago when things were still simple. He was almost done when his phone rang. Not his cell phone, his desk phone. Internal line. He answered without thinking. Rivera. What the hell is this? Evelyn's voice was raw, furious. You're quitting? Just like that? It's for the best. Don't you dare make this decision for both of us. I'm making it for Maya. Your father made his position clear. If I stay with you, he'll destroy everything I've worked for. He'll hurt my daughter. Daniel's voice broke. I can't let that happen. So you're just going to walk away? From the job? From me? From everything? Yes. There was a long silence. When Evelyn spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. I thought you were different. I thought you were brave enough to fight for us. The accusation cut deeper than anything her parents had said. I'm sorry, Daniel said, and hung up. He finished packing his box. He walked out of Cross Technologies without saying goodbye to anyone, and when he got home, he found Maya sitting on the couch, waiting for him. You broke up with her, she said. Not a question. Yes. Why? It's complicated, princess. That's what grown-ups always say when they're being stupid. Maya's eyes were fierce. You love her, she loves you. Why isn't that enough? Because love doesn't fix everything. Because sometimes the right thing is to let someone go. That's dumb. Maya crossed her arms. Mommy always said you should fight for the people you love. That's what she did when she got sick. She fought and fought because she loved us. Daniel's eyes burned. This is different. No, it's not. You're just scared. Maya stood up, looking far too old for 8 years. And I'm disappointed in you. She walked to her room and closed the door. Daniel sat alone in his living room, surrounded by the ruins of the life he'd briefly thought he could have. His daughter was disappointed in him. The woman he loved probably hated him. And he'd thrown away the best job he'd ever had. But Maya was safe. That's what mattered. That's what he kept telling himself. That night his phone buzzed with a text. Despite himself, he looked. It was from Evelyn. I accepted you quitting. I signed the papers. I'm letting you go. But I need you to know, I would have fought for you, for us. I would have faced my parents, the board, the whole world, because you were worth it. We were worth it. I'm sorry you didn't think so. Daniel read the message over and over until the words blurred. Then he threw his phone across the room and let himself break. 3 weeks passed. Daniel found a new job. Lower pay, less prestige, but it kept the lights on. Maya barely spoke to him beyond necessary conversation. The apartment felt emptier than it ever had. Even in the dark days after his wife's death, he tried not to think about Evelyn. Failed constantly. He saw her face in every news article about Cross Technologies, heard her voice in every woman's laugh, smelled her perfume in crowds where she couldn't possibly be. He'd done the right thing. He'd protected Maya. So why did it feel like he'd made the worst mistake of his life? One night, Maya came out of her room and sat beside him on the couch. She didn't say anything, just leaned against his shoulder. I'm sorry, princess, Daniel said quietly. I know you liked her. I loved her, Maya corrected. And she loved us. You threw that away because you were scared. I was protecting you. From what? From being happy? From having a family? Maya pulled back to look at him. Daddy, I heard what you said on the phone about her dad threatening us. And I know you think you're being a good dad by keeping me safe. But you're not. You're teaching me to give up when things get hard. Maya, Mommy wouldn't have given up. And I don't think you should either. She went back to her room, leaving Daniel alone with his thoughts and his regrets. Outside, rain started to fall. And somewhere across the city, Evelyn Cross stood at her penthouse window, looking out at the same storm, wondering if love was always supposed to hurt this much. Neither of them slept that night. Both of them wondered if this was really the end. And both of them separately came to the same conclusion. It couldn't be. Not like this. Not without a fight. Daniel woke up to Maya standing beside his bed at 6 in the morning, still in her pajamas, holding her tablet. "You need to see this," she said, her voice urgent. He sat up, groggy and confused. "What's wrong?" She shoved the tablet at him. On the screen was a news article from an hour ago. Cross Technologies CEO to marry Harrison Chen. Wedding announcement surprises industry insiders. Daniel's blood turned to ice. Below the headline was a photo of Evelyn and Harrison at some charity event, both smiling for the camera. The article went on to describe their whirlwind romance and the upcoming engagement party scheduled for tonight at the Cross family estate. "She's getting married," Maya said, her eyes accusing. "To someone else because you left her." Daniel couldn't breathe. The words on the screen blurred together. This couldn't be happening. Evelyn wouldn't. But of course she would. Her parents had won. Without Daniel, she had no defense against their machinations. And Harrison Chen checked all their boxes. Wealthy, connected, appropriate. Everything Daniel wasn't. "You have to stop it," Maya said. "Princess, I can't just—" "Yes, you can." And she climbed onto the bed, grabbing his face with her small hands. "Daddy, I know you're scared. I know you think you're not good enough. But you are, and she knows it. And if you let her marry someone else, you're going to regret it forever." Daniel looked at his daughter, this fierce, brilliant girl who understood the world better than he did, and felt something shift inside him. She was right. He'd spent 3 weeks telling himself he'd made the right choice, that walking away was protecting the people he loved. But he hadn't protected anyone. He'd just been a coward, and Maya deserved better than a coward for a father. Evelyn deserved better than Harrison Chen. "What time is the party?" Daniel asked. Maya's face lit up. 7 o'clock tonight. "Okay." Daniel swung his legs out of bed, his mind already racing. "Okay, we need a plan." The first call he made was to Marcus Chen. "You have some nerve," Marcus said when he answered. "Do you know what you did to her? She's been a ghost for 3 weeks, won't talk to anyone, barely sleeps." "I know, Abe. I'm an idiot, but I need your help." "Why would I help you?" "Because Harrison is your cousin, and you know as well as I do that he doesn't love her. He loves the merger this marriage will bring, the business opportunities, the status." Daniel took a breath. "Help me stop this wedding, and I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making sure Evelyn is happy." There was a long pause. "What do you need?" Marcus finally asked. The second call was to Patricia Wen. "Daniel Rivera," she said, surprised. "I heard you resigned." "I did. I made a mistake." "A lot of mistakes, actually." He swallowed his pride. "Ms. Wen, I need to get into the Cross estate tonight for the engagement party. Can you help? That's a private event. Invitation only." "I know. But I also know you were at that board meeting when Richard Cross threatened to destroy me if I didn't leave his daughter alone. I know you didn't vote with him." Another pause. "How do you know that?" "Because you're not like them. You actually care about what's right." Daniel's voice was steady now. "Evelyn is making a terrible mistake. She's marrying Harrison because she thinks she has no other choice. But she does. She has me. If I can just get to her. If you crash that party, Richard will have you thrown out, possibly arrested." "I know, but I have to try." Patricia sighed. "You're either the bravest man I've ever met or the stupidest. Probably both. Fine, I'll get you in. But Daniel, you better make this count, because you won't get a second chance." By 5 o'clock that evening, Daniel was wearing the suit Evelyn had bought him months ago, the expensive one he'd never thought he'd wear again. Maya had insisted on coming, and no amount of arguing could change her mind. "This is my fight too," she said stubbornly. "Evelyn's my family." And family shows up. So Daniel borrowed his neighbor's car, something slightly less embarrassing than his Honda, and drove toward the Cross estate with his daughter beside him and his heart in his throat. Patricia met them at the service entrance. "You're insane," she said, but she was smiling. "The party started an hour ago. Evelyn's in the ballroom with Harrison greeting guests. Her parents are watching her like hawks." "How does she look?" Daniel asked. Patricia's smile faded, like someone going to her own execution. That decided it. "Get me in there." Patricia handed him a catering uniform. "Put this on. Blend in with the servers. When you see your moment, take it. But Daniel, whatever you're planning to say, make it count, because everyone in that room will be listening." Daniel changed quickly, then knelt down to Maya's level. "I need you to stay here with Miss Wynne. It might get ugly in there. No way. Maya crossed her arms. I'm coming with you. Maya, she needs to see me too. She needs to know I want this, that I want her. Maya's eyes were fierce. Please, Daddy, let me help. Daniel looked at Patricia, who shrugged. The girl has a point. Fine, but you stay behind me, and if things go bad, you run. Deal? Deal. They entered through the kitchen, weaving through servers carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. They moved through the service corridors until they reached the door that led to the ballroom. Through the small window, Daniel could see the party in full swing. 200 people in evening wear, all celebrating an engagement that should never happen. And there, in the center of it all, stood Evelyn. She wore a white dress. Not quite a wedding gown, but close. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup flawless. She stood beside Harrison Chen, who had his arm around her waist possessively. They were surrounded by well-wishers, people offering congratulations, and Evelyn looked absolutely miserable. Her smile was forced. Her eyes were empty. She went through the motions of accepting congratulations, but there was no life in her. Daniel felt like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. I can't watch this, he said. Then don't watch, Maya said. Do something. She was right. Again. Daniel pushed open the door. The ballroom was enormous. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, walls of windows overlooking the city. A string quartet played classical music in the corner. Everyone was beautiful, wealthy, important. Daniel walked in wearing a server's uniform with an 8-year-old girl in jeans and sneakers beside him. They might as well have been aliens. At first, no one noticed them. They were just part of the staff, invisible. Daniel moved through the crowd, Maya's hand in his, getting closer to the center where Evelyn stood. And then someone recognized him. That's Rivera, a board member whispered loudly. What's he doing here? Heads turned. Conversations stopped. Richard Cross's face went purple. Security! But Daniel was already moving, pulling Maya with him, closing the distance to Evelyn. She turned at the commotion, and their eyes met across the room. The world stopped. Evelyn's face went white. Daniel? Ms. Cross? Harrison said, confused. Who is this man? Daniel ignored him. He walked right up to Evelyn, still holding Maya's hand, and the crowd parted like he had every right to be there. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry for walking away, for being a coward, for letting you think I didn't love you enough to fight. You need to leave, Harrison said sharply. This is a private event. I'm not leaving. Daniel's eyes never left Evelyn's face. Not until I say what I came here to say. Security, Richard roared. But Evelyn held up her hand. Wait. Her voice was barely a whisper. Let him speak. The room went silent. 200 people holding their breath. Daniel's hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. 3 weeks ago, I walked away from you because I was scared. Your father threatened my daughter, my career, everything I'd worked for, and I panicked. I thought the only way to keep Maya safe was to disappear from your life. He glanced at his daughter, who squeezed his hand. But Maya reminded me that her mother didn't raise a quitter, and she's right. He took a step closer to Evelyn. I'm not rich. I don't have the right pedigree or the right connections. I can't offer you private jets or vacation homes, or any of the things these people think define success. He gestured at the crowd. But I can offer you something they can't. Something real. Evelyn's eyes were filling with tears. I love you, Daniel said. Not because you're the CEO of a billion-dollar company. Not because you're beautiful or brilliant or powerful, though you're all those things. I love you because when you're with me and Maya, you're just Evelyn. You laugh at terrible jokes. You burn cookies when you try to bake. You cry during animated movies. You're human and flawed and perfect. Daniel, she whispered. I love the way you look at Maya like she's the most precious thing in the world. I love how you remember everyone's coffee order. I love that you're terrified of thunderstorms, but you pretend you're not. I love that you snort when you laugh really hard and you hate it, but I think it's the most beautiful sound I've ever heard. A few people in the crowd were smiling now, even crying, but Richard Cross was livid. This is completely inappropriate. Dad, shut up, Evelyn said, never taking her eyes off Daniel. Harrison's arm had fallen from her waist. He stood there awkwardly, finally realizing he'd already lost. Daniel dropped to one knee. Maya knelt beside him. I don't have a ring, Daniel said. I don't have a grand gesture planned. All I have is me and Maya and the promise that if you give us another chance, we will spend every day proving that you made the right choice. Maya spoke up, her voice clear and strong. We want you to be part of our family, really part of it. Not pretend. Not for business, because we love you. Evelyn was openly crying now. She looked at Daniel, at Maya, at the life they were offering her, messy and imperfect and real. Then she looked at Harrison. I'm sorry, she said, but I can't marry you. She turned to her parents. I'm done letting you control my life. Done sacrificing my happiness for your approval. If you can't accept that, then I'll walk away from Cross Technologies, from the money, from all of it. You wouldn't dare, Victoria said. Watch me. Evelyn's voice was steel. I built that company into what it is today. I did it without your help, and I can do it again. Richard stood there, speechless. Evelyn turned back to Daniel. She pulled him to his feet, then dropped to her knees so she was eye level with Maya. Will you let me be part of your family? She asked the little girl. For real this time? Maya threw her arms around Evelyn's neck. Yes, 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 yes. Evelyn stood holding Maya and looked at Daniel. I love you, she said. I've loved you since the first time you fixed that server and looked at me like I was just a person, not a title. I love that you make terrible puns. I love how you are with your daughter. I love that you're brave enough to fight for us now. Daniel cupped her face in his hands. I'm sorry I wasn't brave enough before. You're here now, that's what matters. And then he kissed her in front of her parents and the board and 200 witnesses. He kissed her like it was the first time and the last time and every time in between. Maya cheered. Some people in the crowd applauded. Richard and Victoria stood frozen, watching their carefully planned evening crumble. When Daniel and Evelyn finally pulled apart, both breathless and smiling, Patricia Wen stepped forward from the crowd. Mr. Cross, she said formally, I believe we need to schedule a board meeting. I'd like to propose a vote of confidence in Evelyn's leadership, and if you try to block it, I will personally ensure that every newspaper in this city knows exactly how you've been manipulating your daughter. Several other board members nodded in agreement. Richard's face was stone, but he was outnumbered, and he knew it. This isn't over, he said quietly. Yes, Evelyn said, taking Daniel's hand. It is. She turned to the crowd. Thank you all for coming tonight. But there's not going to be an engagement. There's not going to be a merger. There's just going to be me, living my life on my terms. She looked at Daniel and Maya. With my family. They walked out of that ballroom together, past the stunned guests, past the servers who were trying not to smile, past the string quartet that had stopped playing to watch the drama unfold. Outside, the night air was cool and clean. Daniel's borrowed car sat in the circular driveway, completely out of place among the luxury vehicles. Evelyn laughed when she saw it. Is that your getaway car? It's my neighbor's Subaru. I couldn't exactly show up in my Honda. I love it. She kissed him again. I love all of it. Maya tugged on Evelyn's dress. Can we get ice cream? At 9 o'clock at night? We just crashed an engagement party. I think we've earned ice cream. Evelyn looked at Daniel, her eyes sparkling. Your daughter makes an excellent point. So they got ice cream. They sat in a 24-hour diner, still in their formal clothes, eating sundaes and talking about the future. Maya fell asleep with her head on Evelyn's shoulder. I meant what I said in there, Daniel said quietly. I will spend the rest of my life making sure you don't regret this. I could never regret this. Evelyn reached across the table and took his hand. You gave me something I never thought I'd have, a real family, a real home. We're not exactly a conventional family. Good. I'm tired of conventional. They sat there in the fluorescent light of the diner, holding hands across sticky table, with a sleeping child between them, and an uncertain future ahead. But for the first time in 3 weeks, Daniel felt like he could breathe. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt like she could just be herself, and Maya, who'd orchestrated this whole thing without anyone realizing it, smiled in her sleep. 6 months later, they stood in a courthouse with Patricia as their witness and said vows that weren't grand or elaborate, but were completely true. Daniel promised to always fight for their family. Evelyn promised to never let fear make her decisions. Maya promised to love them both forever, and also to get a puppy. They agreed to discuss that one later. When it was over, When they were officially a family in the eyes of the law, they walked out into the sunshine holding hands. "So," Evelyn said, "what now?" Daniel smiled. "Now we live. We build something real together. We mess up and figure it out and keep going." Sounds perfect. It won't always be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. Maya ran ahead of them, spinning in circles on the courthouse steps, her laughter echoing off the marble. And Daniel thought about the night Evelyn had shown up at his door in the rain, broken and desperate, and told him she wouldn't accept losing him. He thought about all the mistakes they'd made, all the times they'd almost given up, all the obstacles they'd overcome. And he realized that sometimes the best love stories weren't the ones that came easily. They were the ones you had to fight for, the ones that terrified you, the ones that asked you to be braver than you thought you could be. Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder as they watched Maya dance. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Think we'll make it?" "I know we will." And they did.